Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This will be the 8th in our series of sessions on upgrading from Primo to Primo V. In today's session, we will learn how to get your GoVE process started. This session will begin with a background overview of the GoVE process, what to consider or not to consider during your internal discussions on your schedule regarding the GoVE setup. We will go through the actual process of activating GoVE as you will experience it yourself. I promise it's as easy and as simple as it's going to sound and look. I'll show you the checklist that Alma offers you to help you keep track of your progress throughout the process. This is not to be confused with an additional checklist provided in the GoVE documentation, which will help you evaluate whether you are finally ready to go live with Primo V. We'll see what the next steps are once you've completed that first and short activation phase. There will be a section where I relate to the GoVE experience of Primo institutions that do not currently have full access to Primo back-office configuration. You're welcome to submit questions related to the session in the Q&A box, and I will try to address them towards the end of the session. And finally, we will look at several questions that have been pre-submitted. Okay, so let's get started with a short high-level review of GoVE and some background details. Now, before I take you through the actual step of activating GoVE on your Alma, let's start at the beginning. The GoVE enablement phase activates Primo V directly on Alma production. This activation and the work you put in setting up Primo V has no impact on your current Classic Primo. It is on an entirely separate platform. There is no need to be concerned that the setup of Primo V will affect your live production environment. Please do remember, though, that changes applied in other areas of Alma, meaning not the discovery configuration, can affect your Classic Primo production. For example, cataloging changes, library or location names or external names, general electronic services, etc. If you're not sure whether the action you are interested in will affect your live Primo, please don't hesitate to contact Primo support or email the GoVE info address. We strongly recommend not using your Alma sandbox for Primo V testing, but rather setting up VE directly on production. The main reason for this is that otherwise you'll probably end up having to manually copy over your configurations to production in order to go live with Primo V. Also, you may end up losing your work when the semi-annual Alma sandbox refresh process takes place, leaving your sandbox with a fresh copy of your Alma production. We will enable Primo V on your Alma sandbox once you go live, and the following sandbox refresh will copy over your Primo V configuration from production. You can hit the GoVE button to activate Primo V anytime. There's no need to plan ahead you're going live before deciding to activate VE. Not that I'm saying you can't plan out the project before you get started, only that you don't have to. By activating GoVE, you're not committing to going live within any time frame. You can take as long as you need. In fact, you're not committing to upgrading to Primo V at all. The setup can be concentrated into a period of as short as 3 weeks, or can be spread out over several months or years. I can only comment that from our experience with Alma institutions upgrading from Primo to Primo V, we recommend aiming for a setup period of between 1 and 3 months. Going back a bit to not having to plan ahead the activation of GoVE. There's nothing wrong with planning your schedule in order to switch over to Primo V between semesters, although many institutions have successfully gone live during the semester and even in the middle of a work week. The GoVE itself is a seamless transition. In general, the upgrade from Primo to Primo V has little effect on end users. Primo V has been designed to simplify the configuration and customization processes and to utilize Alma's platform capabilities. So naturally, the significant differences and advantages of Primo V are on the administration end, the staff members that manage the back end of Primo. So here we are about to initiate the enablement phase of GoVE. A short reminder, we've broken up the GoVE process into 4 phases. The enablement phase, which we are about to discuss, the authentication and configuration phases, which you can go through in parallel to each other, and the go-live phase, which is the actual switch over to Primo V, taking place on a single day and mostly managed on the Ex Libris end. Please note that Alma institutions linked to a network zone will have access to GoVE only once the March 2021 release is installed on production. Also, you will have access to the GoVE button in the institution zone only after GoVE has been activated on the network zone that your institution is linked to. Okay, so assuming you have either the general system administrator role or the discovery admin role, you'll select the GoVE option in your Alma menu ribbon. This will lead you to a list of views that you currently have in Primo Backoffice. You can select one, more, or all of the views. You'll always have a chance to go back and activate additional views that you haven't selected this first time. And of course, after the activation of Primo V, you'll be able to create additional views from scratch for either live or testing purposes, and delete unneeded views. I'll just point out that there's no need to copy over the services page view. With Primo VE, you can simply use your default view for your services page. Having said that, if for any reason you've customized your services page view differently than any of your real views and would like to maintain the difference, then go ahead and select also the services page view to be copied over to Primo VE. As part of this enablement phase, the system will automatically enable the discovery configuration menu in Alma, which controls Primo VE, create selected views in Primo VE as I've just described, copy the customization package from Primo Backoffice to Primo VE, copy label translations from Primo to Primo VE, enable Primo VE search within your local Alma repository and the central index CDI, and create the Primo VE index in the Alma database. Let me show you a demonstration of the activation. As I said, it's short and simple. Click the GoVE button. Primo VE enablement. Select the view you're interested in copying over from Primo Backoffice, and hit go. That's all. As soon as you've executed the GoVE activation step, the GoVE button is replaced with the Discovery button, and the Discovery section will appear in the Alma configuration menu. Unlike the GoVE button, Discovery configuration is currently visible to users with the Discovery admin role. So general system administrators will have to add the Discovery admin role and then log out and log in again in order to start working on Primo V. Just one thing I'll mention here. If you happen to have Explorer enabled on your Alma production and you can't see the GoVE button or can't see the Discovery button after activating GoVE despite having the relevant role, or if you can't find the Discovery admin role in order to add it to a user, contact us via the GoVE info email address. As a matter of fact, contact us if you encounter any of the above scenarios, regardless of whether or not you have Explorer enabled. The GoVE progress tracking chart. The tracking progress page reflects the progress of all tasks that are part of the self-switch process. The tasks with the 2 circular arrows icon are automatic and do not require any interaction or configuration by the administrator. The remaining tasks, which have a person icon, are related to the remaining steps of the self-switch process and may require you to perform additional configuration or to review your existing configuration in Primo and copy it to Primo V. The status of each of these rows is to be manually updated. Set the row's status to in progress once you've started working on the subject area, and set the status to completed once you believe or if you're satisfied with your work on the relevant topic. You'll find that not all task rows are relevant for your institution's current setup of Classic Primo. For these, set the status to not relevant. These statuses are mainly for you and other staff working on GoVE to be able to follow the progress. We may at some point take a look at your progress tracking chart, but again, you're not committing to anything by setting a status to completed. You can always go back and put some more work into any subject area. So you've initiated the GoVE process, and the 4 first rows of the tracking chart have completed. You can now find and inspect the Primo VE view or views that have been created during the enablement phase. In the display configuration section of Discovery Configuration, open the view configuration and select Go to View under the Actions button of the view you're interested in. Alternatively, select Go to View from that Actions button of the Create Views row in the Progress Tracking chart. If you've copied more than one view, you'll be led to the default view. That's it. You're ready to start working. Let me stop here for a moment to address 2 possible issues. The first is that you may notice that Primo VE is not returning any results from your local Alma repository. In this case, go to Search Profiles under Search Configuration in the Discovery Configuration, select Edit on the row of the library catalog profile, hit the Save button, and then hit the Save button one more time if you get an error message. Ignore the error message. The second issue that you may encounter at this stage is you'll notice an error message in the Discovery Indexing row of the Progress Tracking chart, notifying you of records that have failed during the indexing process. It's important to understand that the records are indexed in bulks of 100 records each. So if 1,100 records have failed, it's most likely that only 11 records have actually failed, and the rest of each bulk has been successfully indexed. In most situations, records fail to be successfully indexed in the Primo VE index due to corrupt bibliographic metadata. These failed records can be ignored, or you can submit a case to Primo support requesting a list of the failed records in order to later correct them or delete them. Anyhow, this should not hold you back from proceeding with the setup of your Primo VE. Once you have a Primo VE view and the Primo VE index has been created and is accessible via Primo VE search, you can go ahead to steps 2 and 3 of the GoVE process, authentication and view configuration. These steps can be pursued in parallel, as neither one holds up the other. Step 3, the configuration phase, can be worked on in any order you fancy, although I'd recommend following the GoVE documentation in the order it's presented. We recommend getting started with the authentication setup straight away, especially if you are planning on a relatively short or swift transition process. You may require assistance from your IT department for this authentication configuration step. One important point in relation to authentication setup. Be sure to use and set up Primo VE authentication for your unique institutional CNAME domain, not the generic A record. Here's an example. The CNAME can be something like ben.primo.exlibrisgroup.com, which points at the A record na03.primo.exlibrisgroup.com. So you'll want to use the CNAME and not the A record. This is a good opportunity to mention that we strongly recommend accessing Alma as well with the CNAME, which would be ben.alma.exlibrisgroup.com. If you've clicked on the Go to View option and have been led to Primo VE with the generic A record, it's most likely because you've accessed Alma with the A record. Here are a few tips to get you in the mindset. 1, check out the Primo VE default configuration. Out-of-the-box configuration is extended based on common customers' Primo configuration. For example, Fields that had to be created locally in Primo are mapped by default in Primo V, such as the locations facet, search by call number, and the relations display field. 2. Understand what Primo V offers for your needs. The tools have been redesigned for simpler configuration, and platform capabilities have been merged with Alma to automate many of the processes performed in Primo. 3. The GoV documentation guides you how to make the most of the capabilities and the best way to configure things. GoVE is a chance for you to learn Primo V hands-on. Once you've completed setting up Primo VE, we believe that there will be no need for you to take the Primo V certification located under Primo Training in the Exlibris Knowledge Center. You will have already acquired the knowledge, the experience, and the confidence, making your day-to-day Primo administration that much easier. This goes also for those of you who have not had access to Primo back office until now, mainly Primo institutions entitled to TotalCare service. And finally, this setup phase is a chance for you to reorganize the discovery software product you provide your end users with. It's a time to analyze your Primo setup and consider improving organization and visibility to maximize the discovery services you're presenting to the patrons. When copying your Primo configuration to Primo V, you might want to consider avoiding trying to configure the data in the exact same way as it was done in Primo, but rather instead utilize Primo VE's capabilities and focus on the best way to expose your data for discovery in Primo V. Especially like this slide. Primo institutions entitled to TotalCare service. We believe that GoVE is suitable also for TotalCare service level customers who, for the most part, don't have access to Primo back office. In places where the GoVE documentation sends you off to the Primo back office to check out what you currently have configured, it should be enough to inspect the relevant area in the front end, which is the view. If you're not sure about one specific setting or another, feel free to contact Primo support or email us at the GoVE info address. If, as a Primo TotalCare institution, you find the GoVE setup process too challenging, please contact us using the GoVE info email address, and we'll look for a solution that enables you to make the most of your GoVE process. So I'm going to pause here in order to address questions that have come up in the Q&A box. Scott.
Yes, we do have a few questions that have come in. First question is, how do the statuses affect us if we are running Primo new UI alongside our classic Primo?
Okay, so the statuses, I assume you're relating to the statuses in the progress tracking chart. There's no effect. All your work on Primo V does not affect your live classic Primo new UI.
Okay,
so
next.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, next question is regarding the PC key copy over. We have 2 PC keys as we have 2 Primo back office over 1 Alma with multi-campus setup. Will both PC keys copy over?
Yes, the answer is yes. Both. If you have one Alma institution linked to 2 Primo institutions with 2 separate PC keys, both will be copied over, and you'll have a multi-campus setup in Alma with 1 PC key per campus.
Okay, next question is there no way having a go-to view directly from the discovery menu instead of it being nested within other configurations?
But I guess what you'd like is to be 1 click closer. It's let me just open this up. We're pretty close to it. It's 1 click, 2 clicks, 3, 4. Yeah. So 4 clicks, and I don't think that's going to change in the near future. But that's just for the first time to get your to get that Primo VE URL, you can later bookmark it, and you won't have to go through these 4 clicks again.
Okay, another question that came in, do customizations in the new Primo UI get ported over?
Okay, so the customization package does. That's CSS, HTML, JavaScript, and images. The view configuration menus don't, and that's what the GoVE the GoVE documentation, the view configuration section of the documentation will take you through. It'll take you through the eight steps of configuring your configuring the view, like recreating it. But as I said, the customization package is copied over.
Okay, we don't have any other questions, so you can continue.
Okay. Okay, so here are some questions that we've been presented with in the past. Here's one related to a less standard Primo topology. How does Primo VE work if you have more than one Primo institution linked to a single Alma institution? So that was a question that just came up in the Q&A. So this is what we call a multi-campus structure in Alma. If the scenario is relevant for you, you may already have multi-campus enabled in your Alma. If you don't, please contact us using the GoVE info email address. What will happen is that GoVE will initially allow you to copy over views of the default institution in Primo Backoffice. And once you're ready to copy views from another Primo institution, you can contact us, and this will be coordinated. And as I said, the initial activation of GoVE will copy all PC keys per campus in Alma. Next question. Our Classic Primo offers searching in repositories of other institutions which are on the same Primo instance. A possible solution for this kind of topology would be to set up what's called a discovery network zone, which is an additional joint Alma institution holding a unified index used for the benefit of Primo V without sharing other Alma data. Here as well, let us know if you've activated Primo GoVE. If you've activated and this topology is relevant for you. What are the prerequisites for GoVE? So obviously, a Primo institution and an Alma institution. Other than that, you should be live with Primo New UI, not the classic older interface of Primo. And the other thing is an authentication system that is supported in Primo V, such as SAML, LDAP, CAS. PDS is not supported. You don't have to implement a supported system in your classic Primo before activating GoVE. You can set up Primo V with your new supported system while classic Primo remains using that unsupported system, let's say PDS. As I mentioned earlier, Primo V configuration doesn't affect your live classic Primo production. Of course, none of this authentication talk is relevant if you don't intend setting up authentication at all in Primo V. It's relatively rare, but we've seen institutions that don't use authentication at all. Are there any other advantages of using Primo V as opposed to Classic Primo? Okay, so the background of this question is a paragraph in the documentation listing the reasons why Primo V can be seen as a significant upgrade from Primo, most of which affect the administrators themselves rather than the end users. We're talking about updating records in real time without the need of publishing, harvesting, indexing, and hot swapping, simplified administrative management, deploy jobs being removed from the configuration workflows, streamline easy configuration setup, and some others. Primo V, like Alma, is updated by monthly service packs, whereas Classic Primo will remain with 4 annual releases. And the other benefit I've been able to think of is the online chat support, which will save you opening many support tickets and cut the average time it takes to reach a resolution for your query or issue. Chat support is currently available for those of you located in North or South America, Europe, Middle East, or Africa. And this will eventually become available in APAC as well. Okay, before I go over any additional questions that have been typed in the Q&A box here, I'd like to present you with a summary of the GoVE initiative until now. For those of you who will be watching the recording of this session, not live, the numbers are updated as of today, January 26, 2021, so you can probably skip this slide. By the beginning of last November, all single Alma institutions received access to GoVE. During these 3 months, which included the holidays vacation, 48 single institutions hit the GoVE button and began setting up their Primo V. Of those, 6 institutions have already completed the process and have gone live with Primo V. This is, of course, in addition to other Alma Primo institutions that began the process before GoVE was launched and have gone live since, and new Alma institutions that have gone live with Primo V as part of the implementation of Alma. We have recently granted early access to the first network zone consortium using GoVE to upgrade to Primo VE. All other Alma Primo institutions linked to an Alma network zone will be able to activate GoVE in just over 1 month from now. I'd like to take the opportunity and encourage you to take the GoVE survey if you have not yet done so. Your feedback is much appreciated and valued, regardless of whether or not you've already activated GoVE, or whether you plan to activate a GoVE soon or not. So please do so. The survey will be open just for a few more days. Scott, did any other questions come in meanwhile?
Yeah, we did get a couple more questions. First question is, will anything change if we have 2 Almas attached to 1 Primo? Will we have to do enablement on both or just one?
Okay, so this is a very unique topology. 2 Almas linked to 1 Primo. We'd probably have to look into the specific example more closely to evaluate what you'll have to do. So what I'd suggest is send us an email with the details, and we'll look at the specific example, evaluate, and we'll guide you where you need to activate GoVE.
Okay, the other question is, we have a dedicated sandbox environment for Primo back office, not for Alma. Can we have the same setup with Primo VE?
In general, you get the same. Well, by dedicated, I don't know if you mean on a separate server. So if you mean on a separate server, not on a multi-tenant environment, so the answer is no, because Alma institutions are all multi-tenant. If you're relating to the type of sandbox, and please feel free to add a comment in the Q&A box if point me in the right direction. You'll have the same sandbox that you already have in Alma. So Primo VE is being activated on your current Alma sandbox. But again, also here, please feel free to send us an email, and we'll evaluate the specific situation.
They did respond with the fact that they are multi-tenant, but with their own records.
Okay, so it's relating to a premium sandbox. If you have a premium sandbox in Primo and a standard sandbox in Alma, send us an email and we'll get back to you.
Okay, another question has come in. Will our other existing custom domain and certificates continue to work with VE, or will we need to set up new ones?
Yes, you can keep your custom domain. upon going live, you'll point the custom domain at your Primo V instead of the classic Primo domain. Other elements of the URL, the view code, the tab codes, search scope codes, and record IDs will all be translated. But yes, you can keep your custom domain, and no need to play around with certificates. It's a relatively simple procedure.
Okay, another question. Will the base URL we tell publishers for open URL linking change?
Yes, the base URL will change. Now you'll be backed up by a DNS switch, by automatic traffic redirection. So you won't have to update them immediately on the day you go live. The current base URLs that your these third-party vendors hold will continue to work, redirecting the users from the old services page to the new to Primo VE. But we do recommend eventually updating all those third-party sites with the updated base URL for Primo VE.
Okay, we've got a few more questions. If you want to implement SSO, is it possible to do that after going live with Primo VE?
Yes, you can implement SSO anytime. You don't have to do it before going live. It's a good opportunity to set up this the authentication during the GoVE process, but you can still do all of this after going live.
Okay, another question is, can resource sharing consortia have a mixed VE PBO makeup and still make resource sharing request?
As far as I know, yes. Resource sharing is on the Alma end. Because I'm not 100% confident with this answer, what I suggest is sending us an email. But again, resource sharing is on the Alma side, so it shouldn't affect moving or not moving to Primo V.
Okay, somebody was late to join the session and they apologize, but if they're already on the new UI, will permalinks for Primo records still work?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think, oh, one more. With SSO, will we need to reconfigure the institutional SSO settings authentication to allow Primo VE, or will SSO authentication carry over?
You'll have to reset up the SSO authentication for Primo V, which means let's say it's SAML. So you'd update you'd update the IDP, the identity provider, with a certificate for Primo VE. If you already have an integration profile in Alma for SAML, say, then in most cases you won't have to create another integration profile. But yes, you'll have to set up the authentication once again separately for Primo V, even if you're already using it for Alma.
Okay, another question came in. I inherited an already set up system. Is there a way to figure out who all the third parties are who are using our open URL?
Not that I know of. You'd probably have to know who you've distributed the base URLs to. I don't think there's a way from within Alma to see who all the third-party vendors or sites that are using this that are using your current base URL. But again, you're backed up by the redirection. So even if you miss out one, you're safe.
Okay, we don't have any other questions. So if you want to make some concluding remarks, that would be great. And if anybody has any last-minute questions, you can submit them, and we'll get them after Ben finishes his concluding remarks.
Okay, so that's all for me for now. Thank you for tuning in for our eighth session of GoVE Become an Expert. I hope you all benefit from the topics we discussed today, and I hope to see you again in future GoVE sessions.